All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praise to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and his son Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai, who we know as Jesus Christ. Um, I'm just give a fair warning on this. This is not for babes. All right, this is not a lesson for babes. If you are a babe, this is not a lesson for the babes. This is gonna be pretty meaty and controversial. All right, it's gonna be very meaty and very controversial. I'm sure the comments are gonna be lit up, and I welcome them. I'm welcoming the comments being lit up. How do we explain this? Now, maybe a month or two ago, a few months ago, we went through Second Esdras in classes, and we read through Second Esdras. And I had, I knew certain information about the Apocrypha. And but then I read Second Esdras, and I'm like, how does he know this? Why is he speaking on things he shouldn't be? He shouldn't know. Because if he knows it, then everyone should know it. If this is a 5th, 6th century BC book, if this is a 5th, 6th century book, how does he know so much about the gospel? How does he know so much about Christ? How does he know about the Son of God? And I even stopped and asked that question, like, man, wait, how does he know that? Why do they, and the fact that it's saying, it's saying Jesus Christ because it's written in a circle, it's translated from a certain language into English, which will give you Jesus Christ. Not gonna give you Yahshua, or it's not gonna give you Joshua. And so I had questions. I had certain questions, and long story short, man, I seen this dude. I seen this dude, Reverend Covey, and he put this message up. I don't think a lot of people peep what he said, but he said because Bishop Nathaniel, they were watching a video of Bishop Nathaniel was using Second Esdras 1 for a reincarnation. Let me share my screen here. For a reincarnation, share this tab instead. Let's go to chapter 1 in Second Esdras. Can we go there? Or is he gonna let us go there? What's going on? Okay, we have chapter 1. And you see down there at the bottom, here he was using this, unto whom I give for leaders Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Hosea, Amos. I just going down all the prophets, and he was saying this is showing that the prophets are going to come back. See, he giving them for leaders, so they going to always be your leaders. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, all of them going to be here. I don't agree with that, but I'm just telling you how this whole thing came about. But what he shared was the first 2 chapters of Second Esdras were written by Christians. And I'm like, why would he say something stupid like that? Why would he say something crazy like that? What you mean the first 2 chapters were written by Christians? All right. And, I've seen tons of information about the Apocrypha being written during a certain time, man, during 1st, 2nd century BC. And later, latest you can give it is 2nd century BC. And I was, even us, talking about, messing with other outside canonical books or pseudepigrapha books, because some of them are around the same time. So if one would do the research and would agree, most Christians don't who accept the Apocrypha. They feel like they only accept it because it's a 5th, 6th century writing. It's actually Ezra writing. It's actually his writings. Another thing I always wondered was, why was there a 1st Esdras, 2nd Esdras, 3rd Esdras, 4th Esdras, 5th Esdras, 6th Esdras? And I'm like, why we don't get the other Esdrases? just because I didn't understand what was going on. But now I've seen, just with a little research, like I said, preliminary research, that you do have second Esdras, third Esdras, fourth Esdras, fifth Esdras, sixth Esdras. And it's a reason why they saying this. That's a reason why they ordered it. All of that, 3, 4, 5, 6, is in second Esdras. And they have divided it up for a particular reason. Let's just look right here. You just did a little slight Google. It says the first 2 chapters of second Esdras are Christian additions to the original Jewish apocalyptic book. They are not found in the original Hebrew, Aramaic, or Aramaic texts, but only in the Latin translation. They claim that God was, listen, and this is very important too. They claim that God has rejected the Jews and chosen Christians as his people. They also contain a vision of the Son of God who is identified with Jesus Christ. And this is why I was saying, how is the gospel? How aren't everybody repeating this? How isn't everyone repeating this? And then if it's there, how do they have so many problems with accepting Christ as the Messiah or accepting him as the Son of God? Why are they trying to stone him when Ezra said it 600 years ago? And if, from what we see, and we're going to look into this, we're going to look into some of the stuff we see here. Hold on. Let's go to another little clip here. Let's go here. Let's go to another. Share this tab instead. We'll go to this tab here. It says Esdras is the Greek and Latin version of the name Ezra. Ezra is a central character in this book, which is the second book connected with Ezra in the Apocrypha of most English Bibles. So it is usually known as second Esdras in English, but there is no uniform usage. The term second Esdras is sometimes confusingly used of the LXX translation of, I guess, the Latin translation of Ezra Nehemiah. If so, this writing is called third Esdras. The alternative name, fourth Esdras, is applied because there are 2 books in the Hebrew Bible associated with Ezra, Ezra and Nehemiah, and two more in the Apocrypha. All right, second Esdras and fourth Esdras, Ezra and Nehemiah was on one scroll. Could be one book, but they separated the books. Second Esdras and fourth Ezra is in the name applied only to the core of the present book, chapters 3 through 14. All right, so chapters 3 through 14 is called fourth Ezra. All right, it's called fourth Ezra. Chapters 1 and 2 are often called fifth Ezra, and chapters 15 and 16, sixth Ezra. The book Ezra in the Jewish canon and the apocryphal first Esdras both tell the story of the rebuilding of the temple in the Persian period under Joshua and Zerubbabel. And then the story of the scribe and the priest Ezra who brings the law. In second Esdras, the name of Ezra is used for the central character, but he is concerned about why the temple and the Jewish people are in such a low state. Little else matches Ezra in first Esdras. Second Esdras is unknown to either the Hebrew Bible or the Greek Bible, being known in ancient times only in Latin and Syriac. Since the Council of Trent, 1546, the Catholic tradition has considered second Esdras to be non-canonical, but places it as an appendix to the Vulgate. All right. So since the Council of Trent, they've considered second Esdras to be non-canonical. You do have first Esdras, in the Latin Vulgate, but not second Esdras. Second Esdras is also known as fourth Ezra in compilation. I may be, y'all check everything I'm saying. And put it in the comments if it needs to be corrected. Compilations of 3 separate works. The second Esdras, also known as fourth Ezra, is a compilation of 3 separate works. 5 Ezra, which is the first 2 chapters of second Esdras, 4th Esdras, which is 3rd through 14th chapter, and 6th Ezra, which is 2nd Esdras 15 and 16. It says this book was preserved in Latin and Syriac translations. Syriac, yeah. Though the original was probably in Hebrew, it asks the question in the person of Ezra as to why the temple lies in ruins and the Jewish people are in such a low state. This question asks of God in prayer is essentially the theodicy, which does why does God allow his people to suffer and even his own temple to remain in a destroyed state? An answer is conveyed by means of a series of revelations. By the final answer given by the eagle vision, for Ezra 11, chapters 11 to 12, seems to be that the Messiah will take the hand of Rome, will take a hand and Rome will fall. There's no genuine connection with Ezra. The character has been picked up from the biblical book of Ezra, though most of the rest of second Esdras is currently unique in Jewish literature. Yet for Ezra 14, in which Ezra restores the law by writing it out again by divine inspiration after it has been lost, may well represent an adoption and perhaps adaptation of an earlier Ezra tradition. The book itself is generally associated with a group of writings that are thought to be arisen about 100 CE, including 2nd Baruch, the New Testament, Book of Revelations, and the Apocalypse of Abraham. The statement in 3:1 that Ezra asks his question 30 years after the fall of Jerusalem has been thought a significant chronological statement, since 30 years after the fall of the temple in 70 CE would be about 100 CE, which is also approximately the date of the Christian apocalypse of John. Again, that's another text that we don't deal with. Also, the eagle vision, chapters 11 and 12, seems to show the Roman emperors up to Domitian. Y'all got, you know, I ain't the best reader out here. The composer of the book is anonymous, but thought to be a Jew who stood in the apocalyptic tradition and expected God to intervene in world affairs, destroy Rome, and exalt the faithful Jews in the near future. The writer was not of necessity a Jew living in Palestine, but to expect that he lived in Jerusalem is a reasonable guess. All right, so just and y'all can look this stuff up, deal with this stuff. Let me share this tab here. It says we don't know who wrote this book. Misker believes it was written ABY, an unknown Jew. It was probably originally written in Aramaic, but translated into Greek. The body of the book is most likely dated to the end of the 1st century AD. Though the introductions chapters 1 and 2, and the conclusion 15, 16 were added by Christian authors in the 2nd and 3rd century AD, according to Misker. All right, this book is written in the apocalyptic genre. De Silva writes, 4th Ezra falls squarely within the genre of apocalypse. Important content in this book, and this is, we gonna look into this, and I'm gonna show you why I found some things problematic, and I kind of agree to what's being said here about it being just on the information, that's in there, and how it switches in chapter 3, and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. But this is gonna show you too, because a lot of you especially Israel, y'all ain't gonna like this. Y'all ain't gonna like what you're finna hear now. And if this was in here and I thought this was what it was, I would have to relook at replacement theology. I would have to relook at it. It says chapter 1, the book claims to be a prophecy of Ezra. Through Ezra, God recounts his care and provisions for the people of Israel. Then he tells the people, what shall I do? This is verse 2nd Esdras 1 and 24. 1 and 24. It says, what shall I do to you, O Jacob, you Judah, who would not obey me? I will turn to the other nations and I will give them my name so that they may keep my statutes. And you know, this is, I don't want to say, I know Amos 9:11 kind of goes into to Gentiles being given his name, but you see a rejection here. You see that Judah has rejected to obey. You know, when we get into the New Testament, is, you know, they rejected the Messiah. But then it's saying, I will turn to other nations and I will give them my name so that they may keep my statutes. You ain't gonna keep them. I'm gonna give it to somebody else so they can keep them. Let's look at verse 35 here. This was a very problematic verse. It says, I will give your houses to a people that will come, who without having heard me will believe. Those to whom I have shown no signs will do what I have commanded. It says this section quotes several New Testament passages. An example, Matthew 23:37. And so we always thought it in Israel, we always taught that, you know, if anybody wanted to quote, they said, well, show me a quote. Show me a quote of if somebody was, if we tried to defend the Apocrypha, like, you know, it's canonical, it's God inspired, so forth, and we were in the defense and say a Christian who didn't believe in Apocrypha would ask, well, show me one time where it quoted the New Testament or it quoted the Bible. And we would go to this verse in the New Testament. But these people are saying that it's the exact opposite. That they really copying from the New Testament. That this book was written later. These 2 chapters were written later, and they're copying from the New Testament. So that Matthew 23:37 about the chickens and the hens, about the hens laying the roost, and I want to gather the hens. Israel, y'all know what I'm talking about. But he's saying that actually whoever wrote 2nd Esdras copied that from Matthew rather than Christ quoting it from 2nd Esdras. Scholars believe that chapters 1 and 2 were written by Christians to show how God had rejected the Jewish people in favor of the church. They were added to show how God rejected the Jewish people in favor of the church. Look at chapter 2. It says, 2:23, it says, when you find any who are dead, commit them to the grave and mark it, and I will give you the first place in my resurrection. And again, like how you talking about the resurrection of Christ? Come on, y'all. How is Ezra talking about the resurrection of Christ, or talking about the first resurrection? He explicitly mentions, he is the Son of God, whom they had confessed in the world in chapter 2 and verse 47. And really, we're gonna look at this, but really this is Revelations chapter 7, word for word. Ezra recounts the history of creation in chapter 3, the flood, and Abraham. You may indeed find, well, if you gave Adam a lifeless body, yeah, you was creation of the hands, you breathed him into the breath of life, and he was made alive in your presence. You may indeed find individuals who have kept the commandments, but nations you will not find. 3:36. Chapter 4 has a similar language with Revelation 6. Chapter 5. Chapter 5, picture of the future declining morally. Ezra wrestling with why God has sent his people into exile. Verse 28 in chapter. Are you greatly disturbed over the mind over Israel, or do you love him more than the Maker does? God argues much like the book of Job. Ezra is too finite to understand his judgments. I think that's pretty much about no chapter 7. It says, for my son the Messiah shall reveal shall reveal with those who are with him. Shall be revealed with those who are with him, and those who remain shall rejoice 400 years. After those years, my son, the Messiah, shall die, and all who draw human breath. Then the world shall be turned back to primeval silence for 7 days, as it was at the first beginnings, so that no one shall be left. After 7 days, the world that is not yet awake shall be aroused, and that which is corruptible shall perish. The earth shall give up those who are asleep in it, and the dust and the dust who rest there in silence. And the chamber, see, I'm about to get upset. Hold on. But you should always have your phone off anyway for you. And the dust, those who rest in their silence, and the chamber shall give up the souls that have been committed to them. This is in chapter 7, verse 28 through 32. It says the King James Version is more explicit, basing its translation off the Latin manuscripts. It says, "For my son Jesus shall be revealed." So not only does Esdras know the gospel, not only does he know about the resurrection, not only does he know word for word John chapter 7, but he also knows the Messiah's name. And after these years, my son Christ die, and all men that have life. God gives Ezra an illustration about jewels being scarce, and that's why they're so valuable. So too, there are only a few righteous saved, but this is because this makes them more valuable to God compared to the unrighteous. I will not grieve over the great number of those who perish, for it is they who are now like a mist and are similar to the flame and smoke. They are set on fire and burn hotly and are extinguished. God interprets a vision, and y'all can, just go look this stuff up, man. Yeah, this is like, watch this verse. We talk about that apocalyptic ego. I think they talking about it was the Roman soldier, Roman empires up into this dude named Domitian. For chapter 12, God's interpret the vision for Ezra. He believes that the Messiah will conquer this fourth kingdom in the end days. Watch this. Revelations also, man. He sees a vision of a man coming about to see the world combines to battle this man. This man is interpreted to be God's son who brings judgment of the world. Like, who else is waiting on God's son? What other prophet is like, who else has this information? And then we only have in the text, Ezra, trying to reestablish the temple and get us back to Torah. 14 restore scriptures. 14 restore scriptures. 13, 15 calls down more judgment on the nations. Sinners must not say that they have not sinned, but will burn coals of fire on their head. Everyone who says, "I have not sinned before God and his glory." But I'm gonna show y'all what we're talking about here. Share this tab instead. This is 2nd Esdras. We're gonna go to chapter 2, and we're gonna read this point here in 34. 33, it says, "I, Esdras, received the charge of the Lord unto Mount Oreb, that I shall go unto Israel. But when I came unto them, they set me at naught and despised the commandment of the Lord." And therefore, if it is Christians writing this could be them, trying to play. They try not to say Jesus Christ, but they trying to make it seem like he might have wrote this back in the day. But this is some of the stuff that Christ was saying. This is some of the stuff that's in his parables, and it shows me that they're writing this from like it's beef. They don't like Jews. And they're trying to make sure that they show, if there's gonna be some new rain, make sure they show that these nations, watch this, and look for your shepherd. He shall give you everlasting rest, for he is nigh at hand, that shall come in the end of the world. All right. He's telling the heathen. He says that they despise the commandment of the Lord, and therefore I say unto you, O you heathen, that hear and understand, look for your shepherd, he shall give you everlasting rest, for he is nigh at hand, that shall come in the end of the world. Be ready to give the reward of the kingdom, for the everlasting light shall shine upon you forevermore. Flee the shadow of this world, receive the joyfulness of glory. I testify my Savior openly. I confess him openly. Like this, man, this is the gospel. This should be quoted everywhere. This should be the most important book we have. Be ready to the reward of the kingdom, for the everlasting light shall shine upon you evermore. Flee the shadow of this world. Receive the joyfulness of your glory. I testify my Savior openly. I receive the gift that is given you. Shalakia, oh, receive the gift that was given you, and be glad, giving thanks unto him that have led you to the heavenly kingdom. Arise up and stand before the number of those that be sealed in the feast of the Lord, which are departed from the shadow of the world and have received glorious garments. And this is what I was talking about. This is Revelation chapter 7. You read like the last 20 verses or last 15 verses of Revelation chapter 7, you're going to see this exact same thing. Take the number, O Zion, shut up those of thine that are clothed in white, which have fulfilled the law of the Lord. And look what the Christians, if we saying this is Christians, look what we saying the Christians are doing. They fulfilling the law of the Lord. The number of the children whom thou longest for is fulfilled. And we have a number of them being brought in that is fulfilled. Beseech the power of the Lord, that thy people, which have been called from the beginning, may be hallowed. First Esdras saw upon the mount, Esdras saw upon the Mount Zion a great people, whom I could not number. And they all praised the Lord with songs. And in the midst, where we at? And in the midst of them, there was a young man of high stature, taller than all the rest. Upon every one of their heads he set crowns, and was a more exalted, which I marveled at greatly. So I asked the angel and said, Sir, what are these? And he answered and said unto me, These be they that have put off the mortal clothing and put on the immortal, and have confessed the name of God. Now are they crowned and receive palms. Then said I unto the angel, What young person is it that crowneth them and giveth them palms in their hands? So he answered and said unto me, It is the Son of God, whom they have confessed in the world. Like he already, like, then began I greatly to commend them that stood so stiffly for the name of the Lord. And they stood so stiffly, and that's what I'm saying. It's like it seems like they know what it's saying in Revelation 7. They just not trying to say it. They trying to act like they don't know. They trying to act like they don't know about the patience the saints had to have, and what they had to endure. He didn't endure to the end. They stood stiffly for the name. They confessed him in the world, and they know that he's the Son of God. Then the angel said unto me, Go thy way and tell thy people the manner of things and how great wonders of the Lord thy God hath seen. And then let's go to blue letter. Let's go to blue letter. Let's go to Revelation chapter 7. So if we start looking at Revelations chapter 7 and comparing it again to Revelation 2, watch what Revelation chapter 7 says here. 7 verse where you see the 12 out of all the 12 tribes being sealed. But 7:9 it says, After this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude. And it says, after this. Okay, after this, he's seeing something else. After this, I beheld, and lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations and kindreds and people and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes and palms in their hand, and cried with a loud voice, saying, Salvation to God which sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb. And all the angels stood around about the throne and about the elders and the four beasts, and fell before the throne on their faces and worshiped God, saying, Amen. Blessing and glory and wisdom and thanksgiving and honor and power and might be unto our God forever and ever. Amen. And once of the elders answered, saying unto me, What are these which are arrayed in the white robes, and whence came they? And I said unto him, Sir, thou knowest. And he said to me, These are they which came out of the great tribulation, and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore are they before the throne of God, and serve him day and night in his temple. And he that sitteth on the throne shall dwell among them. They shall not hungry, they shall not, but you see the white robes, you see the palms in their hand. We go back, let's look at it again. Second Esdras, share this tab. I, Esdras, saw upon the Mount Zion a great people, whom I could not number. Let's go back, share this screen and see it. It says, what is it? Verse 9, it says, Lo, a great multitude which no man could number, of all nations. Let's go back. And in the midst of them was a young man of high stature, taller than the rest of them. Upon the heads he set crowns, and was more exalted, which I marveled greatly at. So I asked the angel and said, Sir, what are these? It's kind of the opposite here. In Revelations, the elder asks John, the revelator, about these angels. And John like, man, you already know about these people anyway. He answered and said unto them, These be they that have put off the mortal clothing and put on immortal, and have confessed the name of God. Now are they crowned and receive palms. All right, and they've confessed the name of God. Like, you know, Ezra pretty much, it sounds like he just fully knows this gospel. He had full understanding of this thing. And this is what I'm saying. They should be quoting from him. Let's go back to Revelations. We've seen the palms. And verse 9 again. And before the Lamb clothed with white robes and palms. Palms in their hand. And so you see the similarities there, man. You know, is it a coincidence or is it the same vision? But you know, John the Revelator was a revelation of Jesus Christ. And Ezra seems to have this same revelation already 500-600 years prior, if that's what we want to believe. Or is this a first, second century writing? AD. That, you know, they kind of gleaning from the New Testament, especially these first two chapters, talking about the first two chapters. Now, if we go to chapter 3, watch how chapter 3 comes in. In the 13th year after the ruin of the city, I was in Babylon, and I laid trouble upon my head, and my thoughts came up over my heart. For I saw the desolation of Zion and the wealth of them that dwell. Now, how you have all of these things talking about how Jacob didn't listen and Israel didn't listen, so it went to the Gentiles or it went to these other nations. You have this great vision and revelations of, you have all this great eschatology, end time eschatology, and then you bounce back here after this, and then you're coming back talking about the 13th year. And you discussed it with how Zion is looking. And this is why they're saying first, the first two chapters, last two chapters. Maybe we can talk about the last two chapters. But y'all tell me what y'all think. Get some feedback. Is it a coincidence? Or is it, people just trying to discredit something? Is it the white man trying to be deceptive? And y'all hit the chat. Tell me what you think with that information. And I'll see y'all on the next one, man. Pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed.